Here we are, Larry, once again, ready to investigate what's happening in the world of Tesla, in the world of the economy, in the stock market, and all things related. Sometimes we might even get a little bit over into politics. I don't know, from time to time.
Yeah, well, in the green room, we kind of spouted off a little bit about politics
So,
and tax.
and taxes. Yeah, yeah.
Tax day is coming,
Yes, yes.
and I told you in the green room that I'd been told how much tax I have to pay, and I wasn't shocked because I kind of knew it was coming. It was a lot more than I thought it was, but it was a lot of money. And I told you that for the first time in my life, I'm really angry about the amount I have to pay. Really angry because it's a lot of money. And, it affects my children's life, my grandchildren's life, my family. And I have absolutely no qualms about paying tax. Gosh, I've been so lucky, in my life, and particularly in the last decade, that I'd love to pay it forward. But my God, Randy, when I see what they do with my money,
Yeah, yeah,
when I've learned how freely they've given money to friends and family, given, I mean,
yeah.
it, it doesn't even have much window dressing to it. They just paid it over. And in one case, they sent it to a bank and said, here's 20 billion. You're not allowed to give it back.
Right.
Give it out to our friends and family. I it just I've never been upset about paying tax in my life.
Yeah.
Look, there have been times I haven't had the money to pay my
Right.
tax.
Right.
There are times I've had to go to the government and said, "Give me time."
Yeah.
And there are times my companies couldn't pay their own taxes.
Hmm.
But never have I doubted that the government would look after my money with some concern. It's not never ever doubted. I mean, as I started doing contracting for the government, I began to discover that it's fairly corrupt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not so much corrupt as, it's just broken.
It's well, like any bureaucracy. I mean, I gotta, I have to admit, maybe you had similar circumstances, but I had a consultant come into my business one time, and at the end of his analysis of my books, talking to my employees, et cetera, he says, Randy, do you really like luxury? I said, no, no, I actually don't. I did in the past. I have really wanted the luxurious things in the past, but not so much now. He goes, then how come you're spending about $150,000 a year more than you need to spend? And I was like, oh,
Oh,
yeah, that's what you're talking about. And we literally cut the amount between the very he gave me that information on a Friday, and I cut 150,000 out of the budget on Monday.
but
Uh,
Randy, that is a very good business practice.
mhm.
To have somebody with a third eye
Right.
to come and look at the business and say, "Hey, look what you're doing wrong." I mean, I've done wrong all my life. I'm very bad at controlling expenses, very, very bad. But that's different from,
And yes.
knowing that you are operating in a corrupt fashion.
Yeah.
And there's no way the government handing out this kind of money did not know to the particular people, did not know and have not known in all this time. When I look and see, it's one thing to be, it's absolutely one thing to be not well run and not well organized, and the government gets into bad practices, and that's one thing, and that's just sheer incompetence. And when you have the sprawling bureaucracy, with it comes incompetence.
Right.
But this whole NGO structure, and it's relatively small beer.
Yeah.
If you take all the money that given away to NGOs, it
Right.
probably doesn't amount to 1% of our budget.
Right.
But 1% of our budget, given the size of our budget, is such a gigantic graft.
Yes.
It is such a gigantic grift. It is such a gigantic criminal undertaking that you have to say there's a very large percentage of this bureaucracy that are conducting a criminal,
Yeah,
you know, operation.
yeah, yeah. Well, so Grok continues on their way, doing what they're going to do. And last night, Elon gave us a speech down in Wisconsin.
You meant
I,
Doge. You said
Doge,
Grok. You
Elon,
meant,
Elon and one of his Doge members went
yeah.
to Wisconsin and they gave a talk in Wisconsin, hoping to gin up some activity in Wisconsin to get people out to vote. So what did you think of his speech? What did you think of his talk?
I thought it was fantastic. I mean, I've watched three-quarters of it. I'm into the question time. I'm like probably halfway through, two-thirds way through the question time. I thought it was fantastic. He um, he was very loose. He was very easy. Questions, obviously it was a very friendly audience. I loved the way he handled the guys the guys who were trying to disrupt the meeting. Send my regards to George,
Right.
meaning George Soros, right? Um, and he was very free and easy. I think they're facing an uphill battle in Wisconsin. I think it's pretty serious. And so that can have a very serious implication. And there's people calling Nate Silver is saying that the the House is going to move to the Democrats before even the midterm. So it's a pretty serious situation.
Nate Silver has lost a lot of reputation, I'd say.
Yeah, but I mean, the point is that there are risks,
Right,
and
right.
even Elon said in the speech that the betting sites are like putting a 90% probability
Oh,
on
okay.
this judge winning in Wisconsin. So he said so in the speech. So, but I loved the speech. I thought I'm thinking he may have wanted to actually step in a little bit earlier. It may
Yeah,
be a little bit late in the process now.
right, right. So he did, in the course of the speech, give us another confirmation of the June rollout of Robotaxi. That makes
Did
three
he did.
confirmations in a week that we've received from various people. So when does the FOMO start?
You know, I know this question is slanted towards what's going to happen to the share price.
Yes, well, the FOMO is about the share price.
And I said, I posted today, I'm done with trying to predict the share price. Sorry, predict deliveries and therefore,
Yes.
earnings and so on. There are guys in this game who are really good at it. I am not good at it. I've got I've won that sort of lottery once, but
But
it's a lottery. I do it on macro analysis.
yeah, yeah,
There are many guys who do it on micro analysis,
right.
and there's some macro analysts who are so much better at macro analysis than I am. I just said, I'm out of it. And the other thing is, all it's focused on is what the stock is going to do as a result of the announcement.
Right, right, right.
So we're focused on stock on one day of the year or one day of the quarter, or maybe a week of the quarter, but it's so meaningless. So I withdrew from this whole thing, and it's easier for me not to do it. Um, so I
Back in
don't.
the days when you liked to bet on Tesla stock, because I know you did from time to time, you got some
I
leads,
did.
or you got in, you got out before and after earnings.
I own Leaps. I own Leaps. I own Leaps.
So the main thing that gins up Tesla stock is usually some announcement, some news, some kind of a hope. I've been claiming ever since I started this channel that the two all-time highs that we've hit, the 410 and the 480, were both caused by robotaxi enthusiasm. They also
I
were
think you're
risk
right.
they were also risk on markets. So they got the combination together of the risk on and the robotaxi. So right now we definitely don't have a risk on market. But what do you think? Do you think the FOMO will start before the actual day of release when we see people jumping on to take advantage, or do you think it's going to wait until there's really a few of those cabs running around town?
I think so much depends on two things. The first is Elon's presence and demeanor in the earnings call in 3 weeks' time. What he tells us about the release, about the Robotaxi launch, and the scope and shape and operational structure of the Robotaxi launch, and the release, any new release of FSD between now and the launch. And finally, the first couple of weeks of the launch itself, the first couple of days of the launch itself, there are going to be some mishaps. There are going to be some cars get stuck. Everyone is going to be reported on 50 times, 5,000 times. Every one of them is going to be, laid on thick by the press and calls for Elon's, to be placed in stockade, in stocks in front of the city hall. So it's going to be a very scrappy period. If things go well, the stock could well be over 400. If things go badly, I think it's going to go up whatever happens.
Right, right.
The question is how erratic it's going to be, how many events that are not productive occur, and more importantly, as importantly, what are the new models? When are the new models going to be unveiled? What is the timing of the unveiling? What's the launch cadence of that unveiling, and how many cars are going to be available? So there are a whole lot of unknowns between now, the
And
Robotaxi launch. There's a little bit of earning. There's a lot of erratic movements with the earnings call. Then there's the launch with all the opportunities and risks, and then there's the launch of the new models and all the opportunities and risks around that. And that gets us through to the end of the year. And then there's the question of the Robotaxi launch itself, of the Robocar launch itself,
mhm.
Robocab launch itself, which, it's supposed to be early next year.
Oh, the Cybercab. Yeah, Cybercab.
Cybercab, I keep it, yeah, Cybercab. And that's going to be a very important thing. And so if there's so many unknowns on this journey, that to sit here and say, oh, 360, 444, 500, 600, it's just crazy.
Well, I'm crazy, so I do it.
You're crazy, you do it.
Yeah.
I think you're crazy, I don't do it.
I was right this morning, Larry. I said that both the Tesla stock and the market would not break below the recent lows. And so the market touched down there at just slightly under the 10% level and then bounced way back up. I was shocked. No, I mean I wasn't shocked that I was right about not going lower. I was a little shocked about how much it bounced back. Were you at all shocked about how much it bounced back today?
I didn't follow it at all.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I was just looking at it while you were talking. I didn't really follow it today
Came into
because
the green. This S&P and the Dow came back into the green today.
is that because there's some leak on Trump's April 2? I don't know what's going on. You know, the, everybody's looking for direction.
Right.
Everybody's looking for direction. If you think you're going to find direction
Between now and the second.
between now and June, you're crazy. There are going to be many, many zigs and many, many zags between now and June, long before we find direction. And so trying to count it minute by minute, hour by hour, second by second is just, I mean, it keeps everybody busy. That may be a good thing. I don't know.
So, I was thinking about it before the show went on, Larry, before we got together just now.
Right.
And I went back to my thinking about those conversations with Besant and with Scott,
Yeah.
and the Secretary of Commerce, the Secretary of Treasury, the Secretary of what's the other one is anyway. We had the three different interviews last week, and then what
Okay, there was Besant, and then there was Lutnick. Who's the third one?
was the one that was Commerce.
That's Lutnick.
Okay, no, then
Is Lutnick and Besant? I don't remember a third one.
there was it wasn't a third one with the All In podcast guys.
Oh,
It was
oh, oh.
the old what I don't know why I have such a blank on his name all the time. The guy that used to be on Fox, he was the 8 o'clock forever. Uh, he was the number one on Fox by a lot. He just left like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. Come on now, come on, come on. Lives on a farm. Um, he's a little has some rather weird ways of thinking about some things. Definitely anti-Ukraine. That's why you'd like him. Not anti-Ukraine. Doesn't think that we should be in Ukraine. Oh, and I always draw a blank on his name. It's so
All right,
sad.
anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there was three. Anyway, I felt such confidence, and that's kind of what I'm wondering if, as it went down and touched on that 10% on the correction again, whether it really was the market's confidence in this cabinet that caused it not to go lower. Like, okay, we're going to have these tariffs, but they're not going to be dumb. They're not going to break the economy because he's got this team that is being thoughtful about these kind of things.
Look, they're being very thoughtful about these things. And I think Trump has a calculating mind. We should, we should understand that there's a there's a huge gap between where we are and where he wants to get to. And he's trying to get there extremely quickly, and it's going to break a lot of glass. And when you break glass, the shards fall in, very difficult places. Sometimes they're very difficult to detect, and sometimes, we can't do an easy cleanup. So it's going to take a while before we figure it out. But I will tell you this, it's going to be very, very difficult to achieve his goals. I posted today about the problems of collecting tariffs from China and the way China cheats,
Mm.
not only on tariffs, but also on deliveries in the United States. I don't know if you read that all, but couldn't understand some of the stuff that they were saying on this thread that I was on about the delivery fraud that Chinese vendors are undertaking, and the fraud on tariffs. The fraud on tariffs are very easy. The Chinese government sometimes refunds the tariffs.
Yeah.
But the fraud on postage is incredible. There are Chinese vendors that will supply you with a USPS tag to say postage paid
Mhm.
or cents on the dollar.
Mm.
They're fraud. They're forgeries.
I see.
You slap them on.
Mm.
You ship your product to the United States for under $800.
Mm.
Because under $800, it's free of duty, so it escapes the tariff. And when it lands, it gets shipped by USPS to the recipient anywhere in the United States
Right.
because the postage is paid on the stamp.
Yeah. Yeah.
USPS, what does it know?
Yeah.
Delivers.
Yeah. Huh.
So the guy on the guy that posted the original story said, "Can we make an $8 toaster, or can we make a toaster in the United States to compete with the Chinese?" And we should put his post in the show notes, but because the answer was very simple. Even if we had the steel, even if we did all the manufacturing, even if we bought the part, whatever it was, it would cost us more to deliver it through the USPS than the Chinese vendor is delivering it from China to the recipient. Never mind the parts, never mind the labor, never mind the factory, never mind the equipment in the factory. Nothing else, just the delivery.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So
Um,
when you get this level of fraud and when you get this level of gamesmanship by the government, when you get all of this, how do you solve that?
yeah. Yeah. Exactly. All right. Well, let's step back a little bit. And
Yeah.
so we got the tariffs, but the tariffs, in my opinion, even if it's everything that Trump wants it to be, and it brings in, what did he say today? 600 billion. He's hoping for 600 billion, I think he said, which would be 20% of 30 trillion in sale. Was that, I'm getting the numbers wrong probably, but I
Well,
think
600 billion will go a large way towards
towards
if you can get it, if you can get, I don't know, $1 trillion from Doge and 600 billion, then you're really close to balancing the budget. And you're certainly under the 3% deficit that we need to get yeah.
yeah, and then interest rates have come down and say
Yeah,
so.
yeah, yeah.
But the 600 billion, in order to do that, it comes back to that thing you and I've talked about before, which is you can't have the tariff so high that nobody's going to buy it, and you can't have the tariff so low that the income from the tariffs goes away. So it's kind of a dance. It's kind of that's again, that's kind of why I feel like, with the wisdom that we have in the cabinet, and quite frankly Trump's own wisdom, it's not going to be something stupid. It's going to be something thoughtful and well done. And
Well, we all definitely hope for that. And that would, you know, I mean, he managed to achieve that goal in many respects in the first round, in his first cabinet, in his first term. The question is, the un
unexpected, yeah, yeah,
yeah, the unexpected consequences. Anyway, look, we'll see.
yep,
We'll
yep,
see.
yep. So,
And
but that's right.
China will definitely cheat. And if Chinese don't like me saying that, let me know because I'd like to have that conversation.
Yeah. So that's only one part of the economy.
Yeah.
And the folks, according to Aditya Bahave, these names, Larry, it's impossible. You just can't possibly pronounce these names. She's the U.S. economist at Bank of America. Bank of America Securities doesn't think a protracted consumer slowdown is a foregone conclusion. She analyzed 5 forward-looking data measures for clues as to what the economy is looking like in real time: jobless claims, Bank of America card spending growth,
All
tax
right.
refunds, household balance sheets, and airport traffic. And all tell the same story. There are no signs of cracks yet. Initial jobless
I
claims,
have to agree with her. I have to agree with her. The numbers I'm looking at, I'm not seeing a crack. We look at the numbers every payroll, what do we call
yes,
it?
this coming
Uh,
Friday.
yeah,
Trump's, right. Mhm.
and we don't see those cracks. I see a crack in the real estate market. Zillow are definitely reporting significant slowdown in many markets in the retail market with very significant amount of properties being on offer for longer than, and so there's been a big switch, and and prices are beginning to drop in several markets. sales aren't occurring in other markets. So that may be the one crack that I'm seeing across the economy, which doesn't, it's not great because we've still got this half of the economy that's in recession.
Right.
We've talked about that very often.
Right.
We've got the half of the economy that's doing great, but we're beginning to see the cracks in the property market. People have to get out of their houses. You know, they can't stay there forever, even with the low interest rates, and they're having a hard time moving their properties.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I continue to believe that that this year will continue to be a decent market. I think the prices will not go up as much as they did last year. That is what the real estate board, the Association of Realtors, I forget their name right now, but anyway, they came out last week. They're expecting about a 3% increase in prices this year, and for it to be a good steady year. Now, part of that is going to be because interest rates are coming down, which they did. Well, they tried to today. It looks like maybe in the pre-market they're not holding on, but they were at least they were down. They're back down to 4.25 at least. So at least we're in that space. Um, so
Yeah,
so anyway, it looks like the consumer might be okay. Starting to see a little bit of positivity in the manufacturing side, and that could help as
that's very important. That's very important because that's the great offset ultimately. So a lot depends upon what happens there.
And then there was three different reports over the last 4 days out of the automotive industry. One of them was somebody that I don't respect, but I'm going to just say it anyway. Fain, the guy who's in charge of the unions. The other was, and I didn't write his name down again. It's twice now that I haven't done that. Anyway, saying that the auto industry can move manufacturing back into the United States faster than people think. They have so much missing capacity, under capacity in so many different places. There are probably a lot of companies out there that have maybe, again, Larry, I think you and I had this conversation on Friday too, but let's say you've got a wiring harness and it's barely changed since 5 years ago. Maybe it needs a few changes, but doesn't need that many changes. And 5 years ago, you used to make it in Detroit, and now you're making it in Mexico. It may not be that hard to bring that wiring harness back, make those few changes, and get that line going again. And the manufacturer is going to be like, "Yeah, I want that. I want that business back. I'm gonna move heaven and earth to get it." And I don't know for a fact because I'm not in that business, but I'm now hearing it from different people that it's not going to be, and I'm not hearing anything from the CEOs, Larry. Neither Mary nor Jim are going, we're in trouble here. We're all gonna die.
Mary and Jim are paid too much money to say anything. I mean, you you say that we'll just move the wiring harnesses back from Mexico, but there are not a lot of people who know how to make the wiring harness left in the United States who haven't retired or retired early or been shipped off to somewhere else. I I'm much less sanguine than you are. You're always sanguine about these things. I'm much less sanguine. I I believe Jeff Lutz when he tells us just how difficult this is going to be. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not saying it's not going to be hard. I'm just saying it may be less so than we might think, and I'm going to be very interested to see how fast some of these things can be put back together, and what other kinds of things they do to solve it. There's sometimes many solutions to the
Yeah.
to the problem. Okay, Larry, I had a subject that I was said I would keep till last, which had to do with a couple of pieces of information that just went across the headlines just before we came on. One of those was that the Trump administration is considering removing some of the $9 billion a year that the United States government sends over to Harvard. And they were going to remove some of this, or they're threatening to remove some of it because Harvard isn't doing enough, like Columbia wasn't doing enough, not doing enough to deal with the anti-Semitism on campus. And then simultaneously, separately, out of the a completely different headline, that the Harvard Law School students voted to, requesting, they can't make it happen. So it's more like a vote of no confidence, if you will, to drop the amount of money that the what do they call it, the schools fund, the
The
wealth.
investment fund, yeah,
Yeah.
the, the schools, what do they call it? Yeah, whatever.
Anyway,
Yeah.
they have lots and lots of money that's invested in Israeli businesses, and these law students were saying, we think you ought to withdraw and not spend that money, kind of like they did with apartheid a million years ago in South Africa. So, Larry, I thought that you and I would be the perfect ones to talk about that. Goya and a uh, uh, not only Jewish but with family members in Israel. I'm always shocked, Larry, with my Jewish friends who are not in favor of wiping out Hamas. I just don't get it. I just, and I'm betting some of those law students were Jewish that voted that way.
Yeah, so I think we're talking about the Harvard endowment.
Endowment. That's the
Yeah,
one.
the
Yeah.
Harvard endowment is so big, it's incredible.
Right.
And some of that endowment is invested in many companies, and Israeli tech companies are, of course, investments that have done extraordinarily well in recent years. And so, this whole BDS movement, boycott, divest, and, sanction against Israel has been going on for years. It's been driven by mainly Muslim countries and this amazing amalgam of Muslim fundamentalists together with liberal, academics.
Yes.
It it it's the most puzzling. It's not that puzzling when you think about how, fascism and communism meet,
Mhm.
in the middle, meet together at the edge, at the limits. Um, and so we have this Molotov-Ribbentrop, you know, uh, sort of situation. And so this BDS movement has come to Harvard through the agency of the Fatah and their fellow travelers. Just as Fatah had agents in Colombia, I'm sure they have agents at Harvard, and they're pushing this BDS message. And BDS was really quite tame compared to the kind of calls that were made at Columbia, but
Right.
that's another. Look, the Harvard endowment. I wanted to ask Grog, what is the size
Mm-hmm.
of the Harvard endowment? Because I
It's
think it'll shock our listeners.
I want to say it's in the hundreds of billions.
I don't know about the hundreds of billions. That's a lot of money. Let's see what Grok will tell us. But it's worth asking. 53.2 billion.
Okay, a half a hundred billion. Okay.
Yeah, so it throws off about 2.5 billion to 3 billion a year. It supports 37% of Harvard's operating budget.
Right.
I believe that Harvard's operating budget is 300% of what it should be.
Right. So therefore, it could be all of it.
There's no way the endowment could not pay Harvard's operating budget. I would like to ask Brock is how much has Harvard's operating budget expanded in the last 30 years? Now, it has been my view, my theory in the last 10 years that operating budgets in our universities in general have expanded roughly at the rate at which the government have made
Right.
loans available,
Yes.
and they've increased their tuition accordingly. So what we've had is government
Right.
pumping the cost
Up.
and the revenue for these universities, and at the same time investing money along with, with students, with alumni
Mhm.
into these endowments. So it's a long answer,
And,
we'll maybe talk about it. But operating budget has grown fourfold nominally and nearly doubled in real terms in the last 30 years, reflecting its transformation into a financial juggernaut. So stripping out inflation,
it's doubled.
it's doubled.
Yeah. And no increase in student body.
No increase in student body.
Yeah. And all of that is as my wife likes to call it, administrivia.
Administrivia is exactly right. So the endowment grew from in 1990, the endowment was 4.8 billion.
Okay.
It grew to 53 billion in 2024. So, I mean, tuition revenue surged with undergraduate tuition rising from $17,000 to $80,000.
Yeah.
But it's only 22% of revenue of Harvard today.
Is the student. Yeah.
Yeah, and research funding now is a $500 million business. Here's the interesting fact. When a researcher applies for research funds in Harvard, they get about 25% of the grant.
Right. Right.
75% of the grant goes to the administrivia.
Right.
I may be off by 10% one way or the other, but
It's
I
big.
don't think
It's
I'm
huge.
as.
It's huge. Yeah. Yeah.
And Harvard charges like 3 times as much as most other institutions for the administrivia part of the grant.
Right. Right.
So when the government says it's going to remove, $9 billion a year,
Or some part of it.
or so, well, for me, I would just stop everything. I would just stop everything across the board until DOJ has looked at the numbers, looked at the administrivia, looked at the percentages, because if we're sending $9 billion to Harvard, $9 billion to Harvard, and 6 billion of it is going to administrivia, they're not spending that amount of money on administrivia in the first place.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Look, this got to be looked into. I may be quoting things off, I'm doing things like on the fly here with Grok and so on, but this has to be investigated. And if they are allowing, this kind of anti-Semitism and anti-anybody
Yeah. Yeah.
and not treating their students with, and if they're allowing this DEI, it has to be rooted out. Root and branch before the government gives them another penny. That has to $9 billion to Harvard. They're sitting on, what did we say, 50, $60 million, $60 billion, $90 billion?
53. 53.
53 billion. They're sitting on $53 billion, but we still send them $9 billion a year.
Yeah.
What are we crazy?
Yes.
And listen, Harvard was where the fraudulent papers came from. This famous fraudulent paper about it came from Harvard. And this woman who ran Harvard was she was a serial, copier of everybody's work.
Right. Right.
This has to stop. Anyway, I'll get off my
All right.
soapbox.
So as long as we've got you, all rounded up, Larry, I still want to come back to the other question because
Yes.
I don't think I'm the only one that asked this question, and I think you're the perfect person. You have family in Israel. You've lived in the United States for a long time. You lived in London. You've got this international perspective. What do you think? Do you think it's the suicidal empathy that
Yeah.
Okay, so this is why you have a large percentage of Jews
Yeah.
in America and in Israel who support pulling out of Palestine and I mean out of the Gaza
Yeah.
and yeah.
Look, I have close friends. I had close friends who today advocate for Hamas.
For Hamas.
Yeah.
For Hamas.
10 years ago, they were advocating for BDS. Now they're advocating for Hamas. And we only communicate when there's a death in the family or some really, and then it's very formal. So you talk about suicidal empathy. I mean, it is extraordinary, the empathy that we show. People who would have us immolated,
Yes.
who would have us under the ground.
Right.
We don't feel that way about them. We would love to have, you know, a strong relationship. We're practically family. We were family over the eons. What can we do?
All right. Yeah. I just was, again, I've had so many Jewish friends over the years
Yeah.
who were so liberal in these regards. I never asked them though, because I felt like it was too touchy to ask them that question. But with you, because I know how you feel, I felt like
Yeah.
maybe you could help me understand it. But suicidal empathy, God Sod, I guess I need to read your book when it comes out because it's just we seem to be seeing this.
God has it so right. I mean, he has it so right. Suicidal empathy. It is just captures in 2 words what I would get excited, very angry about, and say in many, 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 many sentences. I'm a man of many words.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we share that one. Okay, so let's find out what has happened, Larry.
Yeah.
During our conversation, the bonds, they did continue down. So we are now down to 4.211. So we're
Not
heading,
enough.
not enough, but we're directionally going the right way. And so that was good news.
Yeah.
Now, oil, on the other hand, is going the wrong way. But there's a lot of activity happening in the oil market. So we're back up over 70, 71.38. This is not horrible.
Yeah, but it was a year ago that we were wishing to get under 80.
Yes, I know. So I'm saying it's not horrible, but it is going in the wrong direction. But it might settle down a little bit over the next week too, as things become a little more, we can kind of see how things are going. Natural gas did pop back up over $4. Um, so overall, oh, so that was another thing, Larry. I was looking at all these stats that we're going through right now. They don't, they're not directionally recession, they're not directionally positive. So you got oil going up, which would say positive market, but you've got gold going up at all-time highs, which would say, well, maybe it's recession. You've got the bonds going down, which would sort of suggest recession, or at least being more comfortable with maybe inflation's under control. I mean, it's kind of 𝐑𝐚𝐽𝐽's always doing that. He's putting a list of all the things that are going in opposite directions of what you would think they
Yeah.
would be going. Anyway, gold's up $6, another $6 at 31.56.
Getting to my 3,200.
Yes, getting closer to your 3,200 is right. Silver has finally found its top, Larry, at 35 and a half. So it's back down to 34.67. And copper continues to stay over $5, but not quite as far over $5 as it was a few days ago. Bitcoin, I actually looked at it a little while ago, Larry, just before we came on, and Bitcoin was up $8 for the day. And I thought, boy, I've never seen that before. But it's now down 280, 292. So we're sitting at 82.2. Okay, so then we've got the equities. Here we go. No, that's wrong. I was looking at the wrong one. Oh man. Okay, so it's all down, but not very much, not insignificant.
Yeah.
The Dow down 0.22 percent, 95 points. S&P down 0.38, 21.25 points, and the Nasdaq down 0.49% or 94.50. So the strong close is not necessarily evidenced in the pre-market as far as continuing tomorrow. Oh, do we have? Yeah, we should look at Tesla real quick. What is Tesla?
Down marginally,
Down another 1%.
1.13%.
Yep. Which
I
is
just
good.
looked at it.
It's not bad. It's not bad. I think it's actually outperforming right now, Larry, over the last week. So it's
Yeah, it is.
outperforming compared to its 3 to 1, kind of thing.
Which is kind of setting up well for the deliveries. I think deliveries are going to be lower than the street, but higher than expectations. That's kind of what I'm preparing myself for.
So now we have two. We're sitting back here again with two street numbers. So we've got the IR, the investor relations number at
Yeah.
377, and then we've got the street at 40 something.
That
Uh,
street number is not I
Not
don't think
real,
it's current. I think we'll see tomorrow the real street number.
right?
But I think the street is going to be high again.
Well, we've got and probably the IR number is going to be, or the consolidated numbers going to be high also, because both AJ and Troy are closer to like 355.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's probably
I think
maybe,
production is going to be very interesting. And did the China number come in today yet?
you know, I don't think
That's worth asking about
sure.
because that's kind of going to determine, did we get China Tesla sale deliveries today? Tell you, Grok is fantastic.
I know.
We don't have official China numbers yet for the day.
Okay. Yeah, I think Grok is fantastic. I encourage people, I'm sure everybody knows it. You really have to ask it. You really have to make sure that you editorialize and ask it to think it through again. So frequently it's like, come on, Grok, go back and check that number.
It really depends on how well you prompt it
Yes,
and and understand it. That's why it gives you a verbose answer because it tries to give you the full color of what it's
right,
done and where
right,
it's getting the answer from.
right.
So I think that's fine.
No,
I
no,
think
I think as long as you understand that it's not always it's gonna gather information from available sources. It isn't it isn't itself coming to a conclusion. It is gathering information and then, laying it out for you. And sometimes the information it's getting is from a really bad source, like Forbes. They might be using Forbes or Insider.
well, it tells you how many sources it's getting it
Right,
from.
right.
And you gotta ask the question well. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. All right. Well, Larry, I want to let everybody know that Brian Wang will be following you tonight instead of Brian White, because this morning my internet was out for 2 hours and I wasn't able to get Brian on.
There's a company that would be very helpful to you. It's called Starlink. You should think about contacting them. I have a good connection there.
You do. Yeah, I bet you do. Yes, that was a big shock. It's usually my internet goes down for 10 minutes at a time, like once a month. But this morning it was over 2 hours and kind of threw me off. So,
Who's your vendor?
yeah, who is my vendor? Yeah, it's uh I could crawl
All
under.
right.
Anyway,
Wherever it is, I think you'd be better off having, I
all
mean,
right. Yeah,
a couple of $100 a month, you can have Starlink. You never have to think about it again.
yeah, yeah. You're right. I've thought about it.
Starlink's never down. Sometimes it goes a little bit slower and sometimes it goes a little faster, but it's never down. I've never had it out.
Mhm.
Now I have a 2 gigabit fiber optic cable into the house,
Okay.
and it's fairly reliable. But when it's down, it's
It's
down, baby. It can take them 3 hours or 4 hours to fix it. I've had three outages in like 5 years. Sometimes those outages have lasted for almost an hour. I'm Starlink. I just
yeah, yeah. There
don't
you
even think about it.
Right. That's right. Very cool. All right, Larry, I think we're done.
Yes,
So,
sir.
as always, I thank you so much for coming on, and we will see you on Friday and Saturday, both.
And Saturday. Yep. Fun,
All right,
fun
sir.
week.
Thank you.
Take
And
care.
Everybody out there, it is great talking to you.